Good morning, everybody, and Happy New Year from the SB Nation NFL show. A reminder that this show is brought to you by DraftKings. DraftKings Sportsbook is an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app today and use code SBNNFL for a special offer when you sign up. That's code SBNNFL only at DraftKings Sportsbook. It is 2022. Week 17 is just about in the books for the NFL. One more game, really no playoff consequences on the line between Pittsburgh and Cleveland, but we will talk about it nonetheless. We are here to talk about everything that happened all throughout Week 17's Sunday action, like we have done all season long, like we did all season long last year here on the SB Nation NFL show. If you didn't know, we stream this show live on the SB Nation NFL Facebook page, on the SB Nation NFL Twitter page, YouTube. We are everywhere. We are coming for you, internet. We also obviously post this show as a podcast. You can listen on the SB Nation NFL show wherever you get your podcast, Apple devices, Spotify. If you can, subscribe, leave a rating, write a review. Those things make us happy, and we love to be happy. And somebody who makes me happy is my wonderful, dashing, debonair co-host. My name, Ochoa, in case I didn't mention that. His name, Pete Sweeney from SB Nation's Arrowhead Pride. You know him. You love him. You want to hug that wonderful beard he's got going on. Pete, you look dashing this morning. We got some oils going on here? Seriously, yeah. You look sharp.
Yeah, that's a pro tip for you first-time beard wearers out there. Just get some oil, right? Makes it nice. Smells fluffy. Good, fluffy, right? Yeah, keep it oiled up if you're going to go beard.
The playoff picture in the NFL is just about set. Who would have thought, Pete, that you can kind of get this done in 17 weeks? You don't really need an 18th week, NFL.
No,
that's kind of the big takeaway.
Especially one where you don't really know what time the game is going to be until 6 or 5 days before, like happened to us last night, right? We both actually found the nice news that we'll be working on Saturday, so that's awesome.
The NFL was kind enough to, in fact, release the Week 18 schedule on the night that Sunday's action was wrapping up in Week 17. Right. Totally logical stuff happening all throughout the NFL. We have playoff tickets that were punched, Pete Sweeney. We have disappointment that was expressed by a lot of fan bases. We have a lot to get to. So Are you ready? Do you want to buckle up, or do you have any sort of shenanigans you want to get to before that?
No, I just want to tell you, there have been 32 games. There's 32 teams in the league, RJ, as you know. 32 games this season decided by a score on the final play of the game, the most in history. Parity is real in the NFL. So keep that in mind as we dive into these games, right?
I suppose. Now, does this include, do you know, like if a game-winning field goal is missed, like, because it is decided, you know what I'm saying? Like,
I don't know where I got that. I'm not going to dive into the math or whatever behind it. I'm just assuming that it's correct because I found it on the internet.
Right. Okay. That's
the just keep that. Yeah. Keep that in mind.
Okay, so let's start with a one-score win. The Los Angeles Rams, Pete Sweeney, keep command in the NFC West, 20-19, the final score. Sorry to our fantastic producer, Rachel. The Baltimore Ravens falling yet again, now down to 8-8. I would have loved to have seen them won. Baltimore was in this game for a little while, kept it close. It felt like that maybe there was going to be some magic because the Rams are kind of playing lackluster, but there wasn't. Cooper Kupp is Cooper Kupp. I mean, he's got everything. He's got all the records. He's got all the fancy schmancy stuff. The Rams trudge on, whatever. 12-4 now on the season. Again, in pole position in the NFC West, they're currently the number 2 seed in the NFC. Were you inspired by this Rams performance, or are you still concerned about Sean McVay's squad?
No, I think it's a little bit of both, right? Because all in all, Matt Stafford had a solid game. Ended up 26 of 35 for 309, the 2 touchdowns, and I thought the 4th down conversion was pretty impressive. I think it's interesting that Odell Beckham Jr. wasn't really kidding around or fooling when he kind of was saying he needed a change of scenery. I think a lot of times you see these players and they're disgruntled and then they go to the next team and they never really get to be back where they were. And Beckham has, surprisingly to me, been the opposite of that. I think what concerns me about Stafford is this pick 6 bug. It's making me really nervous for the Los Angeles Rams.
Very Matt Schaube 2013. Yeah.
And their playoff chances, because he has 4 pick 6s this season. And we, talk about parity, and we made that joke kind of at the beginning of the show.
Not we. No. You. I don't want credit for you, Sean.
Yeah, maybe 80% me, 20% you, kind of, jumping in there. But if you throw a pick six in the playoffs, the margin is just so small when you get down to these final, what is now 7 teams, and I believe the Rams will be playing, on the opening weekend. So you are going to have to win 3 games. Do we really feel comfortable saying that Matt Stafford is not going to throw a pick six in any of these playoff games? How could you be? And I think that just scares me a little bit. Cooper Kupp has been fantastic. It's been a fantastic year. And one thing I like about him getting all these records is he accomplished them all in the 17, or I should say the 16 games. You don't have to worry about, he has an extra game either. So very cool. Von Miller was quote unquote
the game clinching sack. Yeah.
In this game, 2 sacks. And so I think you feel pretty good about the Rams, but again, there is that sliver of doubt with the pick six thing in my brain.
Yeah, there was a lot of victory laps taken on Twitter early on in this game when Stafford did not look great, and he didn't look great last week. Obviously, the Rams have been winning, and a lot of this is what the Rams gave up, and they gave up Jared Goff first round, blah blah. And to be very clear, I think it's very apparent that the Rams did upgrade from Jared Goff, but I don't know that it was I don't know that it was worth it. I mean, again,
well, the significance of it is more that Goff is bad than Stafford is this.
Right. Yeah,
right?
The more extreme, you're right, thing, or the more known quantity is that Jared Goff was not it, not necessarily that Matthew Stafford is it. And he's costing them. I mean, these games are closer than they should be because of Matthew Stafford. I mean, something that was amazing, and the broadcast noted this, Cooper Kupp now, again, one of the most impressive seasons in NFL history from a statistical perspective, going to finish in the top 5 in total yards on the season. Again, we'll see what next week offers, and that will kind of cloud the record books, because he did it in his 17th game. But Calvin Johnson holds the record for most receiving yards in a single season. Matthew Stafford has been their quarterback, both of them. And so, I don't know. He is people used to really bag on Blake Bortles as this and I'm not saying that wasn't legitimate, but he's just a garbage time stats king. I think Matthew Stafford's closer to that than a lot of people wanted to recognize when the Rams first traded for him at the beginning of the season.
He's above the Cousins line for me, but I think he's in that 10 to 15 range, which if you surround that person properly with skill position players like a Cooper Kupp, like an Odell Beckham Jr., you could win a championship, especially if the defense is there too. And the Rams certainly have all of that. It's going to come down to a situation in a postseason game where I think Stafford is going to have to not throw a pick six, maybe go down and score a touchdown. And I just think the trust factor, is it there? Do you feel comfortable enough right now in this particular situation that Matt Stafford could lead a team in a big spot? And I just find myself leaning more no than yes, and I think that's the scariest proposition for the LA Rams fans.
On the other side of this, sorry, Rachel, not that it merits much discussion, Pete, but the Baltimore Ravens are not officially eliminated from playoff contention. Their game in Week 18 will literally hold meaning. But I mean, this is a tough ride.
I was playing with the ESPN playoff machine this morning. A lot of things would have to happen for the Ravens to sneak in the playoffs. I forked them, quote unquote, a couple weeks back on the show. Maybe it was last week's show, just because I think it was a great season when you consider all the injuries that they went through, but just it was asking for too much. And I think John Harbaugh did a great job this year in getting them as far as they did. Not really their fault. I can't really blame them. They to win as many games as they did, to me, was impressive.
I made this point to stats on the look ahead. I'm aware that everybody cares about my fantasy team. Pete, no big deal going for the title tonight. I need I need Deontay Johnson to have less than 20 points. What are my odds? You like him? I mean, feeling pretty good, or
it feels like a Deontay night to me, but we'll see.
Why would you do that? Why? I mean, we're supposed to be friends, supposed to be bros, and here you go. I'd compliment your beard. You know what I mean? Whatever.
I mean, anyway, I don't know if you know this, but it's Big Ben's last game at Heinz Field.
That will definitely change how awful he's been. But again, everything's about me here. I drafted J.K. Dobbins. I mean, we forget everything that they have been through. You even forget that. So can't wait to see Baltimore. in 2022.
Your team is Lamar, right?
That's
Look,
it.
when you're missing Lamar Jackson.
Oh, it's Mark Andrews. It's the Andrews, to be very clear. But yeah,
I like Mark Andrews, and
it's
Andrews.
Lamarck Andrews.
Mark deserves some respect on his name when we talk about tight ends this offseason. I want to discuss tight ends, and I'm going to make sure Andrews is among the Kittles and the Kelseys because he deserves that. I said that last week. But yeah, I mean, this was just too much to ask. When you talk about all the injuries in the secondary, they lost 7 running backs. They had Le'Veon Bell in town. You know, when you get to that point and you're thinking about starting Le'Veon Bell and you're running out Devonta Freeman, and man, to be as close and to be alive in week 18, I think is an accomplishment with all the injuries. You'd want more, right? And that's understandable, but it is what it is.
Agreed, Pete. I'm sorry, but we now have to go to the AFC North champions, the Cincinnati Bengals, who outlasted the Kansas City Chiefs. This game, I know you had, I know Airhead Pride had talked about, kind of toyed with maybe the NFL would flex this game to Sunday Night Football. Man, I wish they had. Like, the whole world needed to see this. 34-31, the final score. The king in the North is, in fact, Joe Burrow. 30 of 39, 446 yards, 4 touchdowns through the air, 266 receiving yards, 3 touchdowns for Jamar Chase. An incredible season he has had, obviously. Offensive Rookie of the Year by a mile. I really thought, Pete, we definitely need to talk about the Bengals, but, both of our teams lost on Sunday, and I felt like Kansas City played well enough to win. I didn't feel that way about Dallas. I feel like they just got beat by a really, really good team. I think that Cincinnati just played really, really, really well. And Kansas City's losses this year have all come against would-be contenders. And so I know that there's a little bit of panic probably around Arrowhead right now. How can we lose this game? Blah, blah. You lose ground on the number 1 seed in the AFC. They had become a possibility after it seemed an impossibility. But Kansas City will be all right, I think. But, man, Cincinnati looks like a lot of fun as the playoffs are around the corner.
The Bengals look legitimate, and I think they needed to get this done to have the confidence to say, well, we can go through the AFC playoffs and we can win every game and get to the Super Bowl. Because I think when you beat a Chiefs team that looked really poor at the beginning of the year, but then puts together 8 wins in a row, and regardless of how it happened, you're able to come out with a victory when you were at home and an underdog going into the game. I think it's impressive. I think it adds an exclamation point to what they were able to do in the AFC North. I think it's deserved that Joe Burrow is up there making one-liners and smoking stogies in the locker room. Now, let's not get too high. This is just a division, and I think you're in a good position to maybe go on a run here in the playoffs. So get right back to work on Monday. But an impressive win. I'm going to be careful here because I didn't love the officiating in this game.
I saw a lot of this too. Yeah.
I'm not saying that it was the reason.
Andy Reid got upset, right? Andy Reid was.
I'm saying it's the reason the Chiefs lost. The referees were too involved. It seemed like it was a little bit more on the Kansas City side of questionable calls than the other side. But here's the bottom line. Regardless of the officiating, this game came down to a field goal at the end, right? Mm-hmm. And there was a point in this game on the Bengals' final drive after they had stopped the Chiefs and forced them to punt on 2 of the 3 offensive drives. So they were able to do it defensively, but they're on their final drive. It is 3rd and 27. You know that Joe Burrow is one of the better young quarterbacks in the league at reading when the blitz is coming. He's great at finding the hot receiver. He is great at finding wherever Jamar Chase is on the field as he sets the rookie single game record for receiving yards, inexcusable. And so it's 3rd and 27. You have a chance here to get the ball back, regardless of all the officiating and the complaints that you have, and put it in Patrick Mahomes' hands and get Harrison Butker down the field and win the game, because Harrison Butker has been really good for the Chiefs. And what happens? Steve Spagnuolo decides to bring this all-out blitz and leave Jamar Chase, who has already gashed you for 200 yards, on Charvarius Ward, who had actually played pretty good coverage on him, but Jamar Chase is just pretty good. He's one of these high-point receivers, and he is so in sync with Joe Burrow, so they bring the house, and they convert a 30-yard catch on a 3rd and 27. I understand the officiating, and I'll admit it wasn't great, but you deserve to lose that game when you mess up that play. And so I think you got to get a little bit of away from the blaming the officiating. You let the number 1 seed slip out of your hands. It's not over yet. The Chiefs could beat the Broncos Saturday, and the Texans, who already beat the Titans this year could maybe pull off what would be a 10-point underdog type of upset, but you gave up control, and now you got to live with that. And I think you got to turn the page quickly. Joe Burrow, really impressive. Here is this next gen stat I want to mention. Burrow was 18 of 22 on passes outside the numbers for 361 yards and 4 touchdowns on Sunday. Living in that outside the numbers world, you got to be a really good quarterback. And I just think it's a sign of Burrow being a player we need to talk more about in the AFC as we're talking about these elite quarterbacks. And hey, congratulations to the Bengals. They deserve this. Who knows? Maybe we see this same exact matchup in the AFC title game.
You mentioned the Chiefs now, depending on the Houston Texans, but looking at the AFC playoff picture as it currently stands on Monday morning, Pete, the Titans do hold the 1 spot, the Chiefs at 2, the Bengals at 3. And I got to say, if I'm the Bengals, I would rather be the 3. And we'll see what happens on Sunday night between the Chargers and the Raiders. But the Chiefs, again, if the playoffs started today, they would draw the Chargers while the Bengals would draw the Colts. And I mean,
I was playing around with the playoff machine. And so the way that it plays out, if the Raiders were to advance, it seems like it's more likely for them to jump up to the 6th seed,
and
meaning
Indy
it would
falls
be the
to
Colts.
7.
Yeah,
right.
It would be like the Colts, or if they're upset, could be the Steelers, or again, in Ray Shell's perfect world, even the Ravens at some point. And if the Chargers win, it seems to like, again, playing with the playoff machine, I wasn't going to do all these million scenarios. It seems like the Chargers would be locked into the 7.
Well, the Chargers,
Chiefs and Chargers again, essentially.
The Colts do have the tiebreaker over the Chargers based on conference record. So, yeah, and right now they're both 9 and 7. So Indy's got Jacksonville on Sunday. So you can put them in. And I'm going to pick the Raiders, to be very clear. I said this I can't pick the Chargers anymore. I can't. You can't lose to Houston last week, and I need some time to be able to pick the Chargers. But while I'm going to pick against them, I can logically assume that they're going to win. So it does look like Kansas City, LA, Cincinnati, Indy. That's what I'm saying. Like, I would rather be the Bengals.
From a Chiefs perspective, they're pretty good against these teams that are running back based. Mm-hmm. So I think you'd rather Indianapolis. The Chargers can play with the Chiefs. And it's a very interesting scenario here, where if the Chargers win and the Chiefs win, and you're looking at a wild card game at Arrowhead, it is going to be scary for Chiefs fans. I think deservedly so. It's a 3rd game of the year. We know about the division games. You usually can go any direction. The Chargers have already won at Arrowhead Stadium, and here we go. Buckle up. It's the AFC playoffs.
Those are the consequences of losing a game like this. There's no shame in it, like we said. I mean, just a great win. And I'm sure you've seen a lot of this at Arrowhead Pride. A lot of Chiefs fans upset that the 1 seed's gone. I think that the Chiefs really caught so much luck to get back in pole position for the top seed. I mean, you certainly remember better than I it looked like they weren't even going to win the division, early on. So, it's been kind of a topsy-turvy year. So I think to even end with the 2 seed, in the middle of that funk would have sounded great, but obviously right now it's frustrating given that Kansas City was right there. Great job by Cincinnati. I thought Zach Taylor was not a great coach. The end of this game, I did not love. I love going for it. I love that. I love, okay, if you don't get it, you're making Mahomes go 99 yards, whatever. I would have personally, and I know this is some revisionist history, kicked the field goal after the offsetting penalties, and I know Cincinnati went for it again, and it worked out. And it does appear that Joe Burrow is going to be fine. Had the injury scare right there. That was a little bit too much fire for me to play with. And I'm a really aggressive person in this kind of stuff. But it worked out. And when it works out, you look smarter, which is what Zach Taylor looks like today.
On the other side of it, there's a question of right now, why did not Andy Reid, when you have 2 minutes left, just pull that Bill Belichick, let him in the end zone?
Yeah, let him score. Yep. 7-point.
You give up the 7 points, but then you're putting the ball back in the hands of Patrick Mahomes. Mm-hmm. At that point, if he scores a touchdown, you could go for 2. You were at the very least in overtime, and they decided to have the defense. It just was a lot of mistakes. They decided to go, defense and try to have a stand and then put it, back to maybe get a field goal. And when you do that, you're again putting the game a little bit back in the hands of an officiating crew who's been killing you all day. And so it's a little bit of both. Like, yeah, the officiating might've been bad, but Andy Reid, and it looks a mistake. Again, hindsight is 2020, gave the officials more opportunities to mess with them. And, there was a call at the end of the game that cost them.
Let's move on, Pete. I did the Sunday late night wrap up this week, filling in for stats, and this game was certainly interesting to get through. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers outlasted the New York
gosh.
Jets. They were at one point trailing 24-10 in the third quarter. It looked like this was going to be the upset, perhaps, of the season. But Tom Brady went Tom Brady. Another game-winning drive, big shocker. 34 of 50. Brady was 410 yards, 3 touchdowns. Did have 1 interception. Gronk 7 catches, $115. Michael Carter got off to a great start. Speaking of my fantasy team, 3 carries for 54 yards before suffering a concussion. You had a Braxton Berrios return touchdown in this game, or not return touchdown, excuse me, a touchdown on the ground, which was really cool that Michael Carter was involved in. And so while every Jets fan is bummed to see Tom Brady beat them again, the obvious headline from this game, Pete Sweeney, is that Antonio Brown I quit the Bucs, was released by the Bucs, however you want to put this, but was ipso facto dismissed by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers during the game. Everybody has seen the footage by now, taking off his uniform, throwing pieces and bits of it into the crowd, leaving the game. Lots of social media talk about this, but it does appear that Tampa is, going to be one of the top 3 seeds in the NFC, but that Antonio Brown's career in the NFL might now actually be over.
Right. A real bizarre looking situation in New York, and a lot of concern. It seemed like right after
New Jersey,
the game,
just to be clear, New Jersey
from Tom Brady. He says it's a difficult situation. Everybody should do what they can to help him in ways that he really needs it. We all love him. We care about him deeply. We want to see him be at his best. Unfortunately, it won't be with our team. Bruce Arians, very, very unlikable, and growing more unlikable as time goes on, with just refusing to talk about this and not having any accountability when
I want to jump in here, Pete. Sorry, not to, look,
No,
I have had takes about Bruce Arians in the past that were football related, that, I took some L's on when the Buccaneers won the Super Bowl last year. I have long thought it was silly how he has been regarded as the quarterback whisperer when he's worked with Ben Roethlisberger, Peyton Manning, Andrew Luck, Carson Palmer, even, Jameis Winston was a Heisman Trophy winner, #1 overall pick. And now Tom Brady, I would be a whisperer too if if those were the quarterbacks that I was working with.
Right.
And so Bruce Arians, the timeline of this, remember, he said he'll never be a Buck, because obviously everybody connected the dots. He coordinated the Steelers offense way back when, and knew Antonio said, he's never going to be a Buccaneer. He bent on that. He's here, whatever. Obviously, Bruce Arians is somebody who likes to kind of talk a little bit, right? He likes to make a little bit of a show. And so when the fake vaccination card thing happened about a month ago, you remember Bruce Arians was talking all high and mighty like the Buccaneers. As soon as he's back, we're getting rid of him. And then lo and behold, Chris Godwin gets hurt and he's out for your playoff run. And so Bruce Arians walks that back. And when he's asked about it, he says, I don't care. I don't give a crap what you think or whatever. Again, doing the Bruce Arians kind of deflecting thing. After the game, now all of a sudden, after welcoming Antonio Brown back last week, telling Peter King, and I thought Lindsey Jones of The Athletic had a great tweet about this. He told Peter King that he was a model citizen last week. And look, I don't know what's going on with Antonio Brown. I wish him well, and I hope, whatever he's got going on, if he does have something going on, something that gets turned around for him. But Bruce Arians, he's the person who walks that line for Antonio Brown. And now he comes out, and you're right, he's asked about this. How can you not be asked about this? And just wants to dismiss it, just wants to say, he's not a Buck. I'm not talking about this. Dude, you set this up. This is all on Bruce Arians in my mind. I realize he was pressured by Tom Brady, but this is all on Bruce Arians. He needs to be accountable for this, and he's not, because that's who he is, and he's going to curse, and people are going to say, that's cool, that's my coach. He doesn't answer to anybody.
A few too many hot takes and Twitter therapists for my liking in this whole situation when it comes to AB. He is not right. I think that's something that we could say, but I actually thought that this situation opened up a bigger problem in the league that isn't really talked about all that much. And this was Ian Rappaport's report. I believe it was on Good Morning Football this morning. So it sounded like this is the agent's perspective / the Brown perspective of this. The team asked Brown to go back in the game. Brown has been dealing with a lingering ankle injury, and one, it seemed like maybe had a setback where you thought he might be back at a certain time, and then it took longer, and he's been battered and bruised, didn't really practice during the week, and the team was asking him to go into the game. He was telling the staff, I feel too injured to go back into the game. And the team was like, no, we're paying you to go in. You're going in injured, essentially. And Brown is like, I'm not. And then Bruce Arians was like, well, you're off the team. Now, Brown, whatever you want to say, we don't know for sure. Screw loose, whatever, as having some mental issues. He acted in a way that he probably shouldn't have. If he refused to go in the game, maybe he should have just sat on the bench and they kept it in-house. Didn't happen. We know how he is. He kind of does his own thing, goes by to the beat of his own drum. But this is a problem that happens in every organization. And you talk about mental health and player care and whatnot, where the organization will sometimes say, look, our doctors have said you're good enough to go in. Like, shouldn't that be up to the player at that point? And I think you saw him, and it came to a head, and Brown ended up doing what he did. And it was, I think, embarrassing for the club, embarrassing really for the league. But I don't think we should forget about that. I think there's a huge issue with organizations forcing players to go in while injured. And this was one of the, I think, many widespread occasions that we got to see just because Brown is, for whatever reason, the way he is. And I don't think that should be lost. And the idea that Bruce Arians, to your point, just like wipes it off and moves on. In a way, it's inexcusable. And you mentioned Lindsey Jones of The Athletic. I think it's been Jenna Lane of ESPN that is not letting these things go. And it makes Bruce Arians look bad every single time, because it's not like people were saying you have to take Antonio Brown. No, this was a decision you made
after
because
you said you wouldn't. Like that's at every turn,
would you have gotten
made it worse?
And is the Super Bowl ring worth it? Maybe at the end of the day it is, but now you have a Buccaneers team that, for regardless of everything going on off the field with Brown, needs Brown. They need a player like that. You are down now to some of these pass catchers, and that is not the same Bucs team. I thought that they were fortunate to even win this football game with the fourth downs that they had to convert. They converted a fourth down for a touchdown. Had that not happened, and then had not Robert Saleh go for a 4th and 2 with one of the worst play calls that you'll see on 4th and 2. It looked like a sneak of some sort. It
was awful.
It was while the Jets were going for the win. Had that not happened, you would have been upset by the New York Jets. And the Buccaneers, to me, are just not the same team as they were last year. And they are not worth anyone picking them to repeat and even go back to the Super Bowl. To me, there are so many better teams, and you're going to see that in the NFC playoffs when they ultimately get knocked off.
If the playoffs started today, Tampa Bay would host San Francisco. Of the 3 wild card teams in the NFC, Arizona, San Francisco, Philadelphia, I know that my Cowboys just lost to the Cardinals. I do think the scariest team is San Francisco. Again, I realize the Cardinals,
they're not officially in yet either.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. Like, if the playoffs started today, like, that's a bad draw for the Bucs. That's kind of my point. Like, I don't know.
Or who do they get? Or the other team is those pesky New Orleans Saints that they can't seem to figure out. So it would
be interesting.
It's not a road that looks good right now for the Buccaneers.
Let's move on. Noon was just bumping throughout the NFL. The Las Vegas Raiders, who we have mentioned will play an ipso facto win an in-game on Sunday night against the Chargers this week, got here because of a win, thanks to a last-second win against the Indianapolis Colts, 23-20. The final score. I almost struggled to say the word score. I almost said scar just because I was already thinking of Derek Carr. Actually, Jonathan Taylor, another 100-yard game. Carson Wentz did play despite all of the question entering the week about being on COVID. Benefited from the NFL's adjustment to the CDC's new guidelines, lowering the threshold for when you're allowed to return and all the complications there. But it was not enough for the Colts, who lost at Lucas Oil, had an opportunity to clinch their playoff berth this season, Pete. They are not in yet. They are kind of the 49ers of the AFC in that sense. Very likely going to be in. Again, all it takes is a win against the Jaguars. But is this a frustrating loss for the Colts? Is it a respectable loss? I mean, are we excited for the Raiders? I mean, this is kind of uncharted territory for Derek Carr. This is a playoff game that he's going to get to play in on Sunday night effectively.
Yeah, no, I've been hating on the Raiders all year, and for them to be at this point with everything that they went through
it's been your favorite
as an organization,
frauds. Can't believe you did that.
Is impressive, right? The head coach change, all that off the field stuff with Ruggs, and just continuing to battle. And Derek Carr is one of the most polarizing quarterbacks. I'm obviously not a Derek Carr guy, but hard to argue with this game. when you looked at this game in a vacuum, I think a lot of people would have said, oh, yeah, the Colts are going to win because they've just been the hot team, and good for the Raiders to give themselves an opportunity. Hunter Renfrow it just continues to I think, prove any kind of doubters wrong when it comes to what a receiver that is effective and an effective playoff team in the NFL should look like. 7 catches in this game for 76 yards and a touchdown. And you see him after the game and he's in this interview and he's saying, you know, we just got to go 1-0 each week. And I don't know. I mean, the Raiders seem to be uber focused. I think the NFL, for all the criticism that it gets when it comes to scheduling and whatnot, got that final game right, where it's essentially a playoff game between the Raiders and the Chargers. And there's a lot of intrigue. Now, on the Colts side, the Colts now need to go and beat the Jacksonville Jaguars to make the playoffs, as you said.
Which they will. I mean, they will.
They probably will, right?
They will.
And just like the Titans have the Texans, you're looking at these division games. I don't know which one it's going to be, but there is going to be some type of upset somewhere on Sunday that affects the seeding, because we're just kind of assuming right now, and I think that could be dangerous. And like, would you be stunned if the Jags were able to pull it out and all of a sudden the Steelers are in the playoffs out of nowhere, right?
This is the one that I would be stunned. Like you mentioned Tennessee, Houston, right? Tennessee wins that into the 1 seed. That I would be like, because the Texans have beaten the Titans this year. You know what I'm saying? So like that would be like, oh, you know, I'm not stunned. This I would be stunned. The Jaguars the Jaguars are awful. Jonathan
Taylor, 20 carries for 108 yards, leads the NFL now with more than 1,700 yards. Do you feel JT deserves some MVP love or offensive player of the year? Where do you land on that?
I have decided in my own mind that if MVP is not going to go to a quarterback, and as much as it hurts me to say, I think MVP is Aaron Rodgers this year. Although, if you want to make an argument for Joe Burrow, I'm certainly willing to listen to that. But the non-quarterback MVP to me is Cooper Kupp. That's who the non-quarterback. I think he's been more valuable to his team and who they are and who they've been and where they've come from than Jonathan Taylor. Not to dismiss Jonathan Taylor's value. I lean Cooper Kupp in that sense, because I mean, I realize they're both carrying, you know, quarterbacks who are not necessarily as great as people think that they are. But I think that what Cooper Kupp's doing is more sustainable long term. That's why that's where my vote would go personally.
We may get to it more, but I do agree with you. I think the MVP is now going to go to Aaron Rodgers.
It sucks.
You know,
really
for better or for worse. What's more intriguing is the offensive player of the year, because I don't think Rodgers is getting that. And you'd mentioned Taylor. There's also Cooper Kupp. And I think there's a dark horse here that we don't maybe talk about enough in Deebo Samuel. Where would the 49ers be without Deebo Samuel this year when it comes to value and being a key offensive player? And so that, to me, the offensive player of the year has more intrigue.
Let's fly through the rest of the noon games from Sunday, Pete Sweeney. The Buffalo Bills beat the Atlanta Falcons 29-15, 2 touchdowns for Devin Singletary. Matt Ryan was called for taunting in this game. There was a thought that maybe the Falcons would finish above 500, but that is now officially not going to happen.
Do you believe, or do you have faith in your boy or former boy Josh Allen at this point? Because this was a bad start, and if he starts bad like this in the AFC playoffs, it's going to be trouble.
I love that Josh Allen is getting it done on the ground. I love this. I love this in a vacuum. It's not sustainable. Like I want to see Josh Allen dominate through the air, and I hope that happens. I would love to see it happen, but it was cool, right? Like you win this kind of game in the snow and whatnot, but right now the Bills would draw the Patriots in the playoffs if they did start today. They have not clinched the AFC East, so that's going to go one of those two ways, but it does seem like that matchup is going to happen. Whether it's Buffalo hosting, New England hosting, and I'm very, very intrigued to see that.
I think what is tough for me with Allen right now is that I don't know for sure, but it feels a little yipsy. You know what I mean?
Well, it feels like what Dak Prescott's going through a little bit, you know?
Right
now.
7 of 18 passes for 75 yards, the 3 interceptions, a 12.3 passer rating on passes with more than 2.5 seconds to throw. 3 for 8 for 26 yards and an interception when he was throwing on the run, not from NFL Next Gen Stats. Josh Allen is playing his worst football at the worst possible time. And if
he's playing unique football, he's a threat.
It's like a poor man's Cam Newton in his prime.
I think he's Cam Newton before Cam became an elite passer.
With the way Allen is playing right now, I'm just telling you, with the way Allen is playing right now, and I understand it's working. A win is a win. It doesn't always have to be pretty. Yada yada. Every cliche. they're not going to the Super Bowl, which is what this year is about. They were Final Four last year. They need to at least win the AFC. I feel like for that organization, I feel like they accomplished what they wanted to this year, and they're just not in a place to do it right now. Could that change? Of course it can. We'll see. But hard for me to trust the Bills with the way Allen is playing. Yes.
Trash day. I told you Pete Sweeney was moved here in the new year to Tuesday, but Bear still wants to be a part of the show. We'll get to the Bears. Don't worry.
Where's the Bear cam?
Quickly, the Patriots beat the Jaguars 50-10. Not a lot to say. I mean, other than, better luck next year, Jaguars. I mean, just like I'm saying, worst team in the NFL.
I have an important thing to say. I'll make it quick because you're trying to force me along here. The come up of the week is in this game, and it's Mac Jones, 22 of 30 for 227 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. And I understand, look, it is the Jaguars. Let's get that out. It's been a sad year for Jacksonville. They've been spicy in a couple games.
It's been a sad existence for Jacksonville,
right,
to be clear.
But I really, really feel like Mac Jones, the same quarterback we just mentioned, the Patriots and Bills, who his own team said, you're only going to throw it 3 times in this all-important game. I think he could really use this type of game as a confidence booster, because if you're going to win in the playoffs, a lot of times it's going to come down to your quarterback. We just talked about that on the other way with Allen, and to have 227 yards, 3 touchdowns, and for Brian Hoyer to be in this game at the end, I think is a huge boost for his confidence. And I'm going to give him the come up of the week, understanding that it is the Jaguars, but I feel a little bit better about the New England Patriots being a little bit more spicy in the AFC playoffs after this performance.
This could be quite the revenge tour for the Patriots, if you think about it. Their path, if they have to go through Buffalo in the wild card round, and then if things go chalk elsewhere, they would have to go to Tennessee in the divisional round. Remember, it was the Titans who bounced the Patriots their last playoff game. So that would, shout out Dashboard Confessional, some vindication potentially on the menu. All right, so I mentioned the Bears. Seriously, this doesn't deserve a lot of time. They beat the Giants 29-3. The New York Giants had -10 net passing yards. Joe Judge came out after the game and said that ex-players want to be a part of this. Said that they're much closer to where they want to go than they are farther away. The Giants are losers, dude. They are total abject failures.
My only real note that I have written down for this game is this: is Joe Judge a pathological liar? So that might tell you everything.
I mean, I mentioned this, I forgot where, but I think he kind of looks like Michael Bublé. Do you see it? I think he kind of does.
Maybe, yeah. Cousin of him.
That's like all he's got going on for him right now, though. Is he kind of looks like Michael Bublé.
I understand that the New York Giants are in a position where they don't want to keep dismissing coaches after two seasons.
This is embarrassing, dude.
You have to move on from Joe Judge. I hope that they, for one of the considered the great franchises in the NFL, I hope they go in a different direction there, because if you're leaning into Judge and if you're leaning into Jones for another season, it is going to be Groundhog Day. You talked about how it's 2022. Where is this organization going to be if they go that way on January 3, 2023? I'll tell you, RJ, spoiler alert. It's the same freaking place. It's the same place.
I actually think it's amazing how even if the Giants do fire Joe Judge next week, that they have already even messed that up by last week doubling down on him. You know what I'm saying? Like, they couldn't even, if they do move on from him, which they should. I mean, I hope they don't. But if they do, they have already made it messier than it had to be because they're so committed to their own hubris and pretentiousness.
The New York press is tough too. And I think if you're the Mars, like, you almost need to be considering coaches with experience, because
Go get Doug Peterson, Giants.
With the New York press, they're not just going to like let Joe Judge and this idea that old players are calling him die. They're going to ask you about it again, man. This is not like a different market. And he is just not prepped for that. And they got to go get a coach with experience.
We touched on them being the 1 seed in the AFC. The Tennessee Titans got a 34-3 win. I mentioned this on the wrap-up, Pete. Miami saw their 7-game win streak snapped, and in the same breath same week saw themselves eliminated from playoff contention. Like, think about that. Like, how often do you have a 7-game winning streak snapped and at the same time find yourself eliminated from playoff contention? Like, that's just a weird thing to be true.
Well, when you have a 7-game losing streak in the same season, that can tend to happen.
Not a great game for Miami. This might have reopened the quarterback talks, in South Beach. But a ho-hum day at the office for the Titans. This was a great day for the Titans to get an emphatic victory, to get closer to the playoffs, to win the AFC South, to now be the number 1 seed in the AFC. Set yourselves up for a Derrick Henry return.
The Titans are dangerous. It is a team that somehow has been within the number 1 seed, these past few weeks. They ended up relinquishing it to Kansas City. It came back to them. Now you're in a position to arguably get the best weapon in football back and have a week off and only need 2 wins to get to the Super Bowl. If you're just able to beat the Houston Texans next week, I'd read that Henry may be back for that game. And you talk about the Houston Texans, and I think the Titans are going to win that game. If they have Derrick Henry, they're definitely going to win that game. And then they get a week off. So you not only have the best weapon in football back, but in him having to rehab this injury, he is going to be fresh and he is going to be playing in the cold. And they are going to be a really, really tough out. So a team that we really don't talk about all that much, you have to say this, is in prime position to go to the Super Bowl. They are. I mean, we don't talk about them enough.
Especially if they do draw the Bills or Patriots in the divisional round. Like if we assume they're the 1 seed, and if Kansas City and Cincinnati, or whether it's the Chargers or they upset the Chiefs or whatever, if they have to go through each other, you know what I'm saying? Like that right. This really, 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 really broke well for them, which I know is sad for Chiefs fans.
And then sometimes, like you were saying too, I mean, they get the lowest seeded team. So sometimes you'll get these upsets where X team only has that 1 win in them, and they're feeling really good because, hey, we got that playoff win, and then boom, steamrolled by the Titans. And then you're really looking at just one tough game to make it to the Super Bowl,
Thanks to a series of events, including a win by themselves on Sunday, Pete Sweeney, your Birds, the Dirty Birds, the Philadelphia Eagles, clinched a playoff berth. It was a 20-16 win over the Washington football team, as if the New York Giants weren't heavily in contention for the most embarrassing team in the NFC East. The Washington football team a few weeks ago.
Come on, it's the Giants. You don't have it.
They're the most embarrassing football team, but the actual football team is embarrassing in a far different way. After the Cowboys took their own custom benches to FedEx because they were so broken, Washington decided to copy that in Philadelphia at Dallas, lost both of those games. They have not only lost every game where they have had their own custom benches, they have lost every game to other teams with custom benches. What's more is not only are their benches faulty and broken and worthy of other teams bringing their own in, but now their stadium is faulty, literally almost collapsing on Jalen Hurts as he walked off the field in celebration of a victory. This was a nice win for the Eagles. It was a little bit touch and go. Washington up 10-0 early. Nick Sirianni, I've seen the chatter that he deserves to be coach of the year. That is so dumb to me. I do think he's done a nice job. I just think coach of the year belongs to Matt LaFleur far and away.
Or Vrabel.
My point is, like, Sirianni's not in the top choices for me, but this has been an impressive turnaround. They've played some bad teams and whatever. I mean, but they're a playoff team. Philadelphia Eagles are a playoff team today.
I think especially in a conference too, where 8-8 is the only team that's still like it's a little bit of a top heavy conference. So the Eagles sneaking in it's good, right? But by the way,
sorry, Pete. RIP all the people at the beginning of the season. Well, the NFC East is going to be won with 7 wins the NFC East. Like, that's what's so stupid, is that people just like lean on what happened last year. The Eagles have 9 wins, and they are not even the division winners in the NFC East. Just to put in perspective, like, how stupid that kind of stuff is.
No, you're right. You're right. I think the Eagles can be an interesting team in the playoffs. They've now had 10 straight games, or I should say 11 straight games, where they're rushing for 100 yards or more. And I think a team that can run the football in many different ways with Hurts and Scott could always be interesting in the postseason, because, you give this team a lead, then suddenly they can have their way with teams. I think ultimately I do feel the Eagles probably are going to be this team that is one and done in the postseason, as much as I would like to see them play the Dallas Cowboys. The Cowboys kind of blew that for me, which I don't appreciate, RJ. But I mean, the Eagles are a better team than the Washington football team. They're now a playoff team. And it's also, I think, relevant to say this, and this comes from Next Gen. The Eagles had 3 players with 4 or more quarterback pressures in Cox and Sweat and Hargrave. And you run the football and you play defense, you never know what can happen in the postseason. This is not going to be the NFC champion, but I am interested in seeing how they play on wild card weekend.
If the playoffs started today, which is something I've said a lot around here, actually, I'll phrase it this way, and I'm very excited to talk to BLG on the mixtape this week. The NFC East and NFC West are probably going to shake out against one another. Whoever wins the NFC West is likely going to draw the Philadelphia Eagles at home in the wild card round versus whoever loses the NFC West is likely going to visit the Dallas Cowboys. There are other possible permutations, but those are the most likely ones. So you've got, an interesting kind of divisional alignment there. I don't really buy the Eagles' chances much, but I think this is a successful season for the Eagles. I mean, they made the playoffs. They learned some things. They, have a lot to go on when it comes to Nick Sirianni. They have 3 first-round picks. Granted, one of them from the Indianapolis Colts is going to be from a playoff team. But they've got a lot of ammo to restock, and but the most important thing is for them to make a decision about quarterback and who it's going to be moving forward.
You're right. Every I think organization. What do you want to see from your team? What do you want to see from that team? You want to see one step forward from the previous year. And the Eagles accomplished that this year. And so I think Sirianni does deserve credit. I thought that opening presser was a laugher, and he was made fun of quite a bit. And coming out of that, you were like, this guy's never going to cut it. So for him to, I think, put together what he was able to do and make the postseason, and who knows if they are able to somehow grab an upset win, then you feel like, okay, this team is a year ahead. And you mentioned the draft picks, and you'll see how it develops. But if you're an Eagles fan, right, this is a good year, right? You're going to watch playoff football. That was a huge question going into the season.
As further evidence as to how bad the New York Giants are, we now have seen playoff appearances from the Washington football team, the Dallas Cowboys, and the Philadelphia Eagles since they all tore down their coaching staffs and rebuilt them. Meanwhile, the New York Giants just can't get it right. Speaking of the Dallas Cowboys, they are headed for the playoffs. They have won the NFC East, but they lost on Sunday to the Arizona Cardinals, 25-22, the final score. Arizona gets their first win in a month's time, up to 11-5, even though they were once 10-3. Kyler Murray has won 1 billion games at AT&T Stadium. And here's the thing, I love Kyler Murray. He's awesome, but I really hate when you get the broadcast that parachute in and do their first Cardinals game. We don't need to hear about, the big hit he had in Pee Wee football. We just get the same stories over and over and over again. And I realize, broadcast, that it is your first time doing a Cardinals Kyler Murray game, but we've seen it 1 billion times. He, I thought, played well. You mentioned officiating when it came to Kansas City. CeeDee Lamb blamed officiating. Mike McCarthy blamed officiating to a degree. He was a little bit less pointed, rather, when talking about it. And that just really bothered me. That was, I called it lame in our post-game show because you lost. You had an opportunity. Everyone is talking about the Cowboys and saying you can only beat the bad teams. Anytime you play a good team, you fold. You're not enough. The offense, etc. Blah blah. This was your chance. This was your chance to prove, look, this is a playoff team. Yeah, they've had some struggles because even then, the Cardinals had lost 3 games in a row. One of them to the Lions. But you could have beat a playoff team, kept yourself in contention for the 2 seed, kept yourself theoretically in contention for the 1 seed. The 1 seed would not be wrapped if the Cowboys had won this game. And they were flat. They made it close at the end. And that really doesn't matter much to me. They were down 22-7 to start the fourth quarter. And again, they did make it close. And then there was the would-be fumble that didn't get reviewed. And I get that bothers a lot of Cowboys fans, but you cannot fall flat in this game. That is inexcusable to me.
What's weird, us being on Monday Football Monday, is our teams are pretty parallel when it comes to how the year is going. When, you think about the expectations and at one point being considered surefire bets for the Super Bowl. And then, you have that narrative where it's tough to beat any of the good teams in said conference, which can be said for both. And neither are going to be the bye week, it seems like. And again, parallel, upset about the officiating, 3-point losses to another conference contender on the same day as you're entering the playoffs in a couple weeks. Tough for the Cowboys. I think it's important to remember at this stage that, so long as you're in the postseason, you won your division. Playoffs, everyone is 0-0. So you got to look forward in that sense. And I think from a Cardinals standpoint, you were waiting for a couple weeks to see this version of Kyler Murray again. And similar to what I said about Mac Jones in the AFC, I think this suddenly gives you confidence in the Cardinals. I was watching some of the pregame stuff and the talking heads going into this week, and a lot of them were saying the Cardinals are just at a certain point where you can't really see how they could beat a team like the Dallas Cowboys. Well, they went out and they were able to do it. And I think Chandler Jones had a nice game in this. And if the Cardinals are going to do any damage, considering Watt is questionable and Hopkins we don't really know about, Murray's going to have to play like this. And so I think the Cardinals have to feel better about themselves following this game.
Big win for the Cardinals. This could be we could see a rematch of this in 2 weeks. That's how it would go today. Is the Cardinals?
Should mention Michael Gallup to me is a big loss as well.
Man, tore his ACL. At least that's the fear. That's what Jerry Jones said. And generally Jerry can't keep that kind of stuff to himself. At the end of the first half on a touchdown, you mentioned that, and Michael Gallup is set to be a free agent. And this coming years or off seasons free agency class at wide receiver was going to be headlined by Chris Godwin and Michael Gallup. And you've got Allen Robinson as a part of that mix, obviously. But, a torn ACL, it's difficult, obviously, to see what a guy gets on the open market. And Gallup has missed a lot of time as is. But to tear that ACL in January, it really adjusts your recovery time and
right.
how it timing of
the timing of the injuries are so bad for these two guys who I think a lot of teams on the open market would have viewed as elite pieces you could bring in, and they will definitely be discounted now because of their injuries and their timetables for sure.
The San Francisco 49ers got a nice victory under Trey Lance, 23-7 over the Houston Texans. You mentioned Deebo Samuel. Deebo Samuel, another productive day. 3 catches, 63 yards. Did have 7 and the touchdown, 7 carries for 19 yards. Trey Lance ultimately 16 of 23 for 249 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 to Samuel, 1 to Elijah Mitchell, who returned from injury in this game. Pete Sweeney, 21 carries, 119 yards. 49ers looked legitimate. It was a little bit scary when they were down 7-0, but then everything stabilized.
Right. And I just think because of the team that they are and the different looks offensively that they show, not a team you necessarily want to see in the postseason. I think any of these seemingly limitless skill position players can be the one that defeats you. And they're not in yet. They need to take care of business next week. I didn't get to watch a ton of this game. I'm not sure if you did. How did Trey Lance look? Do you have any reaction to that?
I don't have a huge takeaway on it personally. I know Stats really enjoyed breaking down a non-Jimmy Garoppolo quarterback on the Niners Nation post-game show.
Right.
But I think what's so interesting or frustrating is you just don't know who their quarterback's going to be in the playoffs. This is such an unknown team, and not in a good way. They're a very, very strange team to be in this spot.
Right.
And they've obviously had their own weird season and fought and clawed back and gotten here. And looks like they will be the 6th seed, but I don't trust this team a lot. But they could. They're the truest wild card to me, and obviously they are literally one. But they are the truest wild card in that they could be great or they could be awful.
I know, and I think you look at the playoff picture, and that's kind of what I was saying. In the NFC, this seems to be, of all the teams, right? And you look at the wild card teams, this seems to be the team that you probably wouldn't want to see your team drawing at any point in the postseason, just because you don't know what you're going to get.
Let's blitz through these two, Pete, because they were boring. The Saints are alive, thanks to a win over the Carolina Panthers, 18-10. The quarterbacks in this game, Taysom Hill and Sam Darnold, if that gets your juices flowing. But New Orleans 8-8, Carolina 5-11. I don't know how Jay-Z or anybody else feels about that. Interesting report that came out over the weekend, Pete. I'm not sure if you saw this. Obviously on Sunday morning, Ian Rappaport's and Adam Schefter's of the world talked about Vic Fangio and Joe Judge and Matt Nagy and their prospects in 2022, or being the coaches of their teams in 2022. But over the weekend, Joseph Person of The Athletic had a report about Matt Rule, where he noted that David Tepper, the Panthers owner, is embarrassed about the start to Rule's tenure. So I don't know that Matt Rule is safe entering 2022 either.
He seems to think he is. Now, it's not up to him, right?
Now, by the way, speaking of things he thinks, he allegedly was telling his team that he could go get one of these top college jobs and make way more money, but that he would rather be there with them.
Yeah, I don't know. The one thing I'll say about the Panthers, more so than the Tepper family, more so than the Maras, is I think in Carolina, it's more likely for them to cut their losses, and it seems like they're a little bit more forward thinking in that sense. And I would tend to agree. You watch this press conference, and the C word, which is cringeworthy, feels relevant when you hear Matt Rule kind of comparing it to Jay-Z and some of these stories that are coming out. These stories only come out when your team is not having success, to be fair. They haven't had a lot of it. And so, again, we'll see. It's a candidate for me that might want to just scrap everything and start over, talking about coach, quarterback, the whole thing.
Don't be the Giants, right? Like,
that's what I'm saying. Don't be the New York Giants.
Like, don't recommit just because you're afraid of the work of doing it over again. So, tough times in Carolina, but we'll see what happens.
Rule, if I'm not mistaken, and you may know this off the cuff, RJ, but Rule has quite a few years on that deal, right?
It was a 7-year deal, if memory serves, and he's 2 years in. But I mean, bite the bullet, David Tepper.
Yeah, you got to be careful about giving these coaches. I mean, if you're a team hiring a coach, I mean, you got to be going for 3 or 4 years max, because it just doesn't have always pan out.
You know what's amazing is Matt Rule was acquired or was hired by the Panthers because of the big contract that he was given, and the primary contender, with for David Tepper in landing Matt Rule was the New York Giants. So what does that tell you about the Giants' ability to evaluate head coaches? That this, they just missed out on this wonderful experience. But it is what it is. We'll see who's coaching the Seattle Seahawks this coming season, Pete Sweeney. It does seem like I mean, Sunday was at the very least the last time Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson were both on the Seahawks sideline. One of them will be gone, perhaps both of them, but it was a nice day. This was a nice, let everybody feel good game. It did come at the expense of the Detroit Lions. 51-29, Russell Wilson threw 4 touchdowns, 3 of them to DK Metcalf. I'm sure there were a lot of people who sat DK Metcalf in their title games and are thinking, this is it? Really? This, like, now's the day. Now you want to go off for your 3 touchdowns. No Jared Goff. Tim Boyle was not good. I mean, this was everything you kind of expected it to be.
Yeah. I mean, what can you say about this game? 2 non-playoff teams. You have the Lions, who are amidst their rebuild. Like, I'm interested in seeing what the Lions look like next year. It's a next year type deal. It's been that way the whole year. And Seattle is in line to look very different. And it was, I think, nice for one last great game for Russ with Pete. And you see that, and it's a little sad in that sense. But all good things, RJ, as they say, have to come to an end, as you know.
Yeah, it was a great era of Seahawks football. Like, don't be sad because it's over. Smile because it happened. That's the loss.
What's Russ's jersey next year, in your opinion?
I think he's a Giant. I think that's the New York Giants.
Wow.
Like they're like, this will fix everything. We'll trade the draft cap. The Giants are about to have 2 top picks because they have Chicago's as well. And it would be totally New York Giants to keep Joe Judge, bring Russ in, keep Daniel Jones around, have this awkward situation. I mean, I've done an impression already on the NFC's mixtape. Couldn't you just hear like Russ like go blue, go blue, not Michigan blue. Yeah. Cause I'm Wisconsin, but go blue, baby. Big blue. Yeah. Yeah, New York. They named this city twice. It was so nice.
You can't really nickname the Giants. Go Ants. Not as clean as Go Hawks. I think he might be saying Go Raiders. I think maybe a lot of that has to do with whether or not Derek Carr can get it done next week on Sunday Night Football.
If he does play for the Las Vegas Raiders, he will have to face these 2 teams. The Los Angeles Chargers successfully defeated the Denver Broncos. Like I said, I really don't care. I can't be brought back for the Chargers. I'm sorry.
Come on. What do you think? This is a nice performance, right?
It was fine. I mean, Mike Williams and Keenan Allen both caught touchdowns. Justin Herbert, 237 yards to go along with them. Austin Eckler scored. Drew Lock got hurt. I mean, this was like what it was supposed to be. I don't give the Chargers credit for doing what they were supposed to do in this game. You should beat the Broncos.
Yeah, I completely agree. They took care of business. They needed to, and now they have an opportunity, deserved or not, in your eyes, RJ, to make the postseason. Again, I'm really looking forward to a game that is going to matter a lot for both franchises, not only in this year, but really I think repercussions and whatnot in the offseason, especially I think with the Raiders. And this is a playoff game next week, and that's why the NFL has this flex schedule, so everybody gets to watch it on Sunday Night Football.
Do you really? I mean, like I feel like the only team, and I say this respectfully, that should be concerned about the Chargers is the Chiefs. Like that's the only team I feel mildly confident in the Chargers in. And it has nothing to do with the Chiefs. It's just like that's who the Chargers are. The Chargers are like the Raiders, Pete, are Bulbasaur. That's who they are. All they can do is get up for games against the Chiefs. That's it. That's all they can do. That's the only thing that they can really do consistently well. The Chargers are Venusaur. They are an evolved version of that. Meanwhile, Ivysaur was the middle version. The Chiefs are Venusaur. The Chiefs are daddy in this division. And so the Chargers are a little bit better than the Raiders, and that's fine. But I mean, I'm not worried about the Bengals against the Chargers or something like that.
What's interesting is as I look at the conference as a whole, and you just go from a feel standpoint, I'd like the Titans with Henry over the Chargers. Probably with the way Joe Burrow is playing at home against the Chargers, I'd probably like the Bengals. I'd probably take the Chargers over the Bills. I have not been a big Bills guy. I'd probably like the Patriots over the Chargers.
I can't do it.
The Chiefs and Chargers would be a really good round 3 type of matchup on 2 really good games this year. And if they were to match up, and I think I'd say this, I mean, that game's definitely going to be a prime time. One of the primetime games.
It won't be though. It'll be the CBS game. That's what it'll be. There's no way Nance and Romo and Tracy are letting that get out of their hands. No way. So
I have a question for you.
I have an answer for you.
Tony Romo was on the Chiefs game yesterday, and they were away, so I had an opportunity to listen to Romo. Has Tony Romo jumped the shark? I just want to ask you that. Do you feel like the shtick has gotten to a point where maybe it's getting a little annoying?
So I have said this all season long.
Yeah.
The best color commentator in the NFL this season. And I really like Chris Collinsworth.
Right.
It's been Greg Olsen. And look, I love Romo forever. All right. I want to choose my words carefully.
I presented this question because I know how much you do love Romo. I'm just curious to see what you think.
Greg Olsen is what Tony Romo fans think Tony Romo is as an analyst. Honestly, he is actually like Romo is brilliant and fun, but some of the shtick is just his charm and his charisma, and so he almost fools you. You know what I'm saying? Like with his charm. Greg
there was
Olsen
a point
is,
go ahead. No, there was a point in the Chiefs game.
I actually learned more watching Greg Olsen. Like Romo was fun, and like Romo was the first to kind of be this pizzazz. And so like the other day, I tweeted like Greg Olsen's been the best color commentator in the NFL this season, and I got like all sorts of replies except for Tony Romo. Except but Romo's been better. Romo's number 1, and like that's the thing, dude. Is like the Romo stance. Yeah. That's all they have. Like Tony, that is all they have right now.
He did a Madden impression. Rest in peace, of course, to John and it was bad yesterday. And then there was also a point where at the end of the game, the Bengals are on the goal line. This is the biggest spot of the game, right? Because they need to score to go ahead. And it got to a point of 3rd down or 4th down. And Nance is asking Romo, hey, would you go for it in this situation? And Romo's like, yeah, I think I'd go. No, I don't know. Wait, I don't know. No, it depends on and it's like, I mean, if there's one thing you got to be as a color commentator, it's decisive.
You got to have some conviction. Yeah.
And I think he's leaning into like a little bit too much of the
shtick,
happy-go-lucky personality than he was before. And I don't know. And then for the first time yesterday, I came out of a Romo broadcast and I was like, that was kind of annoying in a way.
I love him, and I think he's so talented, but like he will also like predict something, and then if it's wrong, he has enough charm to kind of like be like, oh, let Jim, they did the right thing instead of listening to the stupid analysts up in the booth. You know what I mean? Like he can make you laugh through anything. But yeah, shout out Greg Olsen. He's been awesome this year.
Just something I thought about yesterday while listening to Tony.
If anyone's listening as a Cowboys fan, I'll deny that I ever said this, but to wrap up the week, Green Bay Packers fans are happy. They have the number 1 seed. They have another win, 13-3 for the 3rd year in a row. All Matt LaFleur seasons, they will of course either be 14-3 or 13-4. They have nothing to play for next week against the hapless Detroit Lions. 37-10. There was no Kirk Cousins. That was obviously their best chance. I don't know that really would have helped. Sean Mannion was I guess okay given the circumstances. Dalvin Cook, 9 carries, 13 yards. Just not a great performance for Minnesota. Kellen Mond, shout out to Texas A&M, did get in this game late, and you thought he was going to come back in for another series until he was pulled. And Mike Zimmer said afterwards that he did not need to see him next week against Chicago because he sees him every day.
Mike Zimmer might be done too.
Yep.
You had saw reports from Ian Rappaport alluding to that. They really needed to win these last 2 games, regardless of not having Kirk Cousins. And the Green Bay Packers are, as you said, the 1 seed. And I'm intrigued as to what happens in the offseason when it comes to Green Bay, because it's a certain Super Bowl favorite type of team. It's hard to really see a scenario in which the Packers don't win again on the divisional weekend, at least get to the NFC title game, and they're going to hope and pray that they don't get upset again. And you have a scenario where this team could go to the Super Bowl and could have the MVP quarterback, and he still wants to leave, even if they were to win the championship. And I just think it's going to be a fascinating offseason in that sense. And yeah, it continues as we go once the divisional round hits here.
It irks me to my core to admit this, but Aaron Rodgers is far and away the MVP. If we're talking about Aaron Rodgers, the football player, that's it. That's all we're talking about.
You don't like Aaron Rodgers on the Pat McAfee show?
Well, Aaron Rodgers, the person, wrote a lot of checks this offseason, right? He wrote a lot of checks, and there are a lot of people who do not cash them. A lot. I mean, generally speaking, like Bruce Arians, we talked about, doesn't cash the checks he writes. Aaron Rodgers wrote an enormous amount of checks in the offseason, and he cashed every single one. I'm a big believer in, if you win, you can talk however you want, you can act however you want. I mean, and he proved that. I mean, like look at Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson to kind of compare situations. Like, Russell came out, said, I want to go, I want to move on. And right now we're sitting here like, who wants Russell Wilson? You know what I mean?
Aaron Rodgers drew the daily double, and he risked all his money, and he cashed it, baby.
Well done.
Little Jeopardy joke.
Look at that. That's so well done. I mean, I really, again, from a performance standpoint, think that is super impressive. That's more impressive than anything anybody has done this season. And so he deserves, the football player that he is, deserves a tremendous amount of credit for that. I think that there's enough credit to go around. That's why I think Matt LaFleur is the coach of the year. I mean, because he navigated all of that, and it's obviously easy to do when you have that, or easier to do when you have that quarterback. But I think what they've done is super impressive. It's so frustrating that they have become inevitable. That's what they've done. And when you do that, you deserve a lot of credit. And so shout out to the Green Bay Packers.
I think Aaron Rodgers will be a Steeler. I also am very intrigued about what happens with Devontae Adams, who very clearly, is one of the best wide receivers in the NFL and weapons period in the NFL. So we'll see.
I don't want to make this all about fantasy, and this isn't about me, but my cousin lost the title game in our dynasty league by less than a point. And he had Devontae Adams last night. So, that's tough. Tough thing to think about for a year.
Sorry to Cuzzo.
Monday Night Football, Pete Sweeney, the Pittsburgh Steelers will be hosting the Cleveland Browns. Big Ben's last game at Heinz Field, officially, if he is moving on, because the Bengals have won the AFC North. It would be kind of fitting for it to be a home loss to the already eliminated Cleveland Browns.
Yeah, I think I might watch a movie.
Which movie are we talking about? I mean, like,
hey, I don't know. Maybe
Tick Tick Boom.
Maybe Tick Tick Boom. Maybe a little licorice pizza. We'll see. We'll see what's on the agenda.
I don't think this is going to be much of a game. I actually, there are some teams we don't need to see on Monday Night Football in general. There are some teams we don't need to see on Monday Night Football twice. We've now seen the Pittsburgh Steelers, or we'll see the Pittsburgh Steelers twice on Monday Night Football. Just learn from this. Although, big news, Pete Sweeney. I don't know if you saw this. Again, you were busy gallivanting, the socialite that you are. The Manning cast is back tonight. I know you hate that.
Oh.
They will have Roger Goodell on, so watch out for that. But the fourth quarter guest, Aaron Rodgers. So,
oh man, big risk by Aaron to take there.
That's true. Very, very. Oh, maybe their next game, like maybe they won't lose on Sunday to the Lions, but their next game of consequence. Maybe that's how the Manningcast curse works.
Well,
tell me it isn't like, and I actually would respect the hell out of this. Tell me it isn't like partly in Aaron Rodgers' mind, like I'm gonna go break the Manningcast curse. Like I'm gonna be the one. Like nobody else could do it. I'm gonna be the one to break the thing.
Yeah. I don't know if that's what he's thinking. I think the next time he's not going to play, right? It'll be Jordan Love next week. So next time he plays, it'll be.
I think he'll play a bit. Honest, I don't know how you rest him for 2 weeks. Yeah.
Okay. I don't know. I tend to think it's risky. Nobody has gone cast at one, so we'll see.
Well, I know even if he does not play, Pete Sweeney, that we will play next week. We'll be back. No days off here. No weeks off on Monday Football Monday. Right. A reminder to subscribe to the SB
I think we each
NFL
took a week
show
off this year.
That's true. Wherever you get your podcasts, leave a rating, write a review. Pete Sweeney, the final thought, final word. It can be about anything you want in life. This is our first show of 2022, so the final thought's got to be a great one. Make it good, man. This is all you.
Don't be that guy. Take your Christmas tree down. That's all I'm going to say.
We'll see y'all next week.